Welcome to my latest quick take interview with students and recent grads who experience shaming and censorship for being conservative and or Christian. I hope you will be inspired by their courage and boldness in the face of persecution. All right, we've got Melissa here from Florida, and so we're going to ask her a few questions about culture. So Melissa, give us just an idea of what it's like from your perspective as a Gen Zer. There's really three things we want to ask about: media, overall safety of culture in general, where it's safe to speak freely and express your faith, and then we also want to look at education. So let's just talk about the media first. So do you think the media is censored? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's respectful? Do you think it's unfair? What are your thoughts?
Sure. So first I just want to say thank you, Barry, for having this interview, and I think it's so important to try to look for the truth when our media, like you suggested, is so censored, and there are many people from the mainstream media who are not covering important news stories. I will just share that I was a broadcast journalism major in college, but as a Christian conservative, I found myself censored. One story I wanted to cover about women's health, they said I could only cover it if I covered it from a leftist perspective, and I was not even allowed to talk to someone from the other side at all. So I also worked for a while with NPR, and also when I was there, I was not able to freely express myself on political topics or if I wanted to cover a story regarding President Donald Trump. So I found myself hindered in that way. But you had asked about the media culture. I think that the media culture is not allowing for free speech. And that was your second question. I think that free speech is so vital today. If you are someone who is a proponent of the truth, you'll want to hear the other side of the issue, even if you disagree with it. And people today are saying that we can only hear one side of the issue because that's the side they've chosen to believe, even if it's a lie. If you want to come to a knowledge of the truth, you'll be open to having a robust discussion of all sides. And that's why with things like Facebook, fact-checking and shutting down conservative perspectives, it's so detrimental. I heard recently that some of the fact-checkers are actually connected with Hillary Clinton or special interest groups. I think that's common knowledge, but it's a shame that we have to find ourselves shut down in so many ways.
That's a great point. So let's move our discussion from the media to education. Are the professors mostly fair and reasonable, or are they mostly leftist, or are they mostly on the right side? What was your experience?
Sure. So in my journalism classes, I had some classes that were standard, and those were fine, common classes. But for my journalism professors, they were very liberal. They would tell me things like I said before, I couldn't mention the right side, or I couldn't mention someone from a different perspective, but only a leftist perspective. Also, even outside of college in my internships, I experienced the same thing until I worked for a legal firm called Liberty Counsel.
Yeah.
That was specifically to protect our freedom of religion and gave us free speech as interns. So I would say the college climate right now is very left-leaning, which is one of the reasons here at Turning Point USA, I'm so excited that they promote free speech and fight ardently for that truth.
Excellent. Our last question is related to faith, or freedom of belief, or freedom of religion. The first part of our First Amendment. A lot of people have made claims that people of faith are under persecution, or at least under an onslaught, being targeted or doxxed, somehow publicly humiliated, or losing our job if we have a believing faith that doesn't coincide with what that employer or whoever would have. Have you experienced any of that, or have you observed any of that? And what are your thoughts on where we are today in this country in terms of the freedom of faith, freedom of religion?
For sure. I think that's a great question. Other than what I'd mentioned before, which I do feel like I was punished specifically because of my Christian faith. My professor spoke to all of us students and said, I want all of you to show initiative, but then he directly pointed at me and said, except for her, don't want her to show initiative. I think that even things like David deleted...
Wow, wait, I have to interrupt you. So your professor said, I don't want you to show initiative, even though I want all the other journalists to show initiative. And that was because he knew you were a Christian.
That is correct. He told me specifically that I was not supposed to go out and show initiative. in terms of what I've experienced at my internship, I know our organization has fought to protect people like David Daleiden, who went undercover for Planned Parenthood and it exposed them. I know that he has gone through tremendous persecution. Also people like Kim Davis, who wanted to make sure that she would follow her conscience and only issue marriage licenses between one man and one woman. So people like that have undergone tremendous persecution, and I think we're seeing more and more of it, unfortunately. There's a trend, and if Christians don't speak up now, it's going to be a fire that is continuing to rage, and it won't be put out unless we stop it now. So I have an incredible passion about this. That's one of the reasons I'm here at Student Action Summit today. I think that we need to get a coalition of young Gen Zers, millennials as well, to fight about these things more vocally on social media. And that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful for you for having this podcast and this video today.
Thank you very much. If you were to convey a contrast between the culture when your parents were kids and the culture when the average person today is a kid, what would be one of the 2 or 3 things that you would say that would be a marker of the difference between those two cultures?
I definitely think that we've become a post-Christian society. Back when my father and my mother were young, even the media we saw from Hollywood was much more clean, was much more wholesome for families. Today, the family is disparaged. We see things like Black Lives Matter, whose intended goal is to dismantle the nuclear family or to want to abolish the police or defund the police. And the main point is that my parents' generation definitely was in a more Christian America, and today we've gone post-Christian. So for us as Christians, we especially need to band together. We need to encourage one another and spur one another on towards love and good deeds. But we also need to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ when we're on social media and be wary of falsehoods that the media is perpetuating. So again, I'm very grateful for you.
Hi, I'm David Farah. Thank you for listening to my dad's podcast, The Barry Farah Show, Culture Shift. Click subscribe now to be sure you don't miss an episode. Share this podcast with your friends on social media and give The Barry Farah Show your 5-star rating. Check out today's show notes below this episode and at thebarryfarahshow.com. This podcast is also available in video format at The Barry Farah Show on YouTube. See you next time.